We're looking at Sefer Ha-Aggadah on page 40. Now, the Midrash deals with the dreams of Pharaoh. So, we read in the Torah that Pharaoh wakes up in the morning after having two dreams, is very startled. He doesn't know what happened, what is the meaning of the dreams, and he calls all of his scholars and sages and counselors, and none of them is able to offer a good interpretation of the dream. So the Midrash says this: Putrin hayu oto, ela shelo haya kolam nichnas beoznav. They did give him some interpretations, but he didn't accept them. Not that they couldn't provide any, but he would not accept it. Why? When they spoke about the 7 healthy or fat cows and the 7 thin ones or emaciated ones, they said, Sheva banot ata molid, Sheva banot ata kover. They said, you're going to have 7 daughters and they are all going to die. And when they looked at the Sheva shibolim atovot, Sheva shibolim haraot, 7 full stalks of wheat and 7 empty stalks of wheat which consumed each other, they said, Sheva malchuyot ata mechabesh, Sheva ipachiyot mordot bach. You're going to conquer 7 kingdoms, but 7 kingdoms are going to rebel against you. So, the Midrash says, וכל כך למה? כדי שיבוא יוסף באחרונה ואיתו על גדולה. All this was the divine plan paving the road for Yosef to receive all the glory. Meaning, Pharaoh was primed to accept Yosef's interpretation and to propel him to a great position. Because otherwise, if Yosef was doing it as one of the first interpreters, it wouldn't be considered so important. But once the tension rises and Pharaoh is not able, the king is not able to get what he wants, then now the road is paid for Yosef. And that's how the Midrash sees it. המתין להם עד שנתייגעו והוציאו את רוחו והגח בא יוסף והחזירה. So Hashem dragged it deliberately to sort of like torture Pharaoh to the point where he can't take it anymore. He needs the interpretation, and then Yosef comes and delivers it to him, and he accepts him. It is interesting though. It seems like that the interpretation is embedded in the dream. Why was it so difficult for them to find an interpretation that has to do at least with food? Because when you talk about the symbols of the dream, you have cows and you have stalks of wheat. It's meat and bread, and meat and milk and bread is the basic needs. Fat cows means abundant grazing pastures. Thin cows means that there's drought, that there's famine, and famine was a seasonal thing. We know that Abraham traveled to Mitzrayim because of the famine. Yitzhak wanted to travel to Egypt because of the famine. So it was a common thing, at least in the surrounding areas. Why didn't it occur to any of the interpreters, of the sages, to say it has to do something, it has to do with famine? So one of the commentators, I think it's Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozag, writes that because it was so obvious, they all said it cannot be that obvious solution. Meaning for them, a dream had to be something very, very complex, very intricate. Yeah. And if the solution is right there, they say, no, it can't be that. But of course, the greatness of Yosef is not only the interpretation, his greatness is in manipulating Pharaoh to give him the position that he wanted. That was not an easy thing, because he now comes right out of prison, and he wanted that. He knew that this is what he wants. He wanted to become the viceroy or someone of high position, both to fulfill his dreams, and because he realized that his whole life circumstances brought him to a position where if he doesn't take care of himself, no one is going to take care of him. He was betrayed several times. He was betrayed by his brothers, he was betrayed by Potiphar's wife, and he was betrayed by the cupbearer who forgot him, and for 2 years he was rotting in jail. So now Yosef realizes if he does not seize this moment and takes advantage of it, and gets the position, He's doomed. He's going to be thrown again in jail because nobody wants a Hebrew slave dressed in rags who came out of jail to become the viceroy. So how is he going to do it? That was his dilemma. To achieve that, Yosef sees himself as a pawn in God's hands. God wants him to be there, but he realizes that he cannot just wait for his dreams to come true. He must make them come true. So one instance that we see that is that when they come to call him, to summon him from jail, and they come and tell him, Pharaoh wants you, his immediate response should be, yeah, of course I'm coming, right? And run with them. Instead, he makes everybody stop. We look at the pasuk, it says, "Vayishlach et Yosef vayritzu min habor, vaygalach vaychalef simlotav vayavo el Paro." He sent for Yosef. They pulled him out of the pit. Out of jail. But then he shaved and he changed his clothes and he went to Pharaoh. It doesn't say they shaved him or they made him change his clothes. He did that, meaning that as they pull him out, he says, wait a second, I need to get ready. And they're like, what? The king wants you, and the king is anxious, and he's upset and he's angry. We don't have time for that. He says, no, I'm not going to go like that. And why does he do that? Because he knows right now he's going to make a sales pitch, which is extremely important. He's going to apply for the position of viceroy. You don't come unshaven, unkempt, and dressed in rags and come to the king and say, I want to be the viceroy. So first it has to be presentable. This is already the moment, like what we call the pivotal moment, when Yosef says, this is what I need to do. So he does that. Then he comes to Pharaoh, and the thing that really perplexes all commentators is Yosef was asked to give an interpretation of the dream. No one asked him for a practical solution. No one asked him to tell Pharaoh what to do. He told him, you should gather the wheat and put it here and accumulate food during the years of abundance. Let Pharaoh deal with that. What do you know about the Egyptian economy, right? It seems like audacious, like what we call, it's chutzpah to speak. But not only he did that, he landed the position. How did he do that? So this whole thing was planned because Yosef, probably over the years he was in jail, he realized that he cannot trust other people, and in certain occasions he only can trust himself. So what did he do? The first thing that he does when he comes and talks to the king, and the king says, I heard that you are a good interpreter, Yosef says, Bil'adai ha'elohim ya'anet shalom paro. He says, I am nothing. I'm just a tool. God will take care of you. What does he do? He diffuses the tension because Pharaoh feels in a way very uncomfortable that he, as the emperor, needs to sort of like bow down or to beg Yosef for help. And he's a slave, he's a prisoner. Yosef says, don't worry, I'm not going to make you look bad because I'm just a tool. And he announces in front of everyone. So he says, I'm just a tool in God's hands. So already Pharaoh feels well. And at the end, after Yosef delivers the interpretation, what does Pharaoh say? He says, Aharei odia Elohim otecha kol zot, en navon v'chacham kamocha. Since God made you know all this, you're a very wise man. He echoes Yosef's language. Yosef says, God will deliver me the information. And Pharaoh says, I see that God really delivered you the information in a proper manner. So like I know the game that you're playing. It's good. We could work together. So that's the first layer that Pharaoh says, I need someone like you. I need someone smart, but I need someone who will not make himself smarter than the king. So the moment Yosef acknowledges, I have nothing of my own, it's all God's gift, Pharaoh says, okay, I could work with you because I could always say that the gods or God works through you to help me. That's number one. But number two is Yosef, when he presents the solution, and he says, first the interpretation, then the solution. He says, the interpretation is that you're going to have 7 years of famine, and then 7 years of abundance, and then 7 years of famine. And then he says, ועתה ירא פרעה איש חכם ונבון וישיתהו על ארץ מצרים. And what you should do, that's how we read it in Hebrew. What you should do is this and that. But it could be read differently. He says, I assume that's what you're going to do. ועתה ירא פרעה means I assume probably you as a wise ruler, this is what you're going to do. Because that would be the right course of action. And he sort of suggests that this is part of the dream. Right? So now that combined with what he said before, that he's just speaking for God, he sends a message to Pharaoh. He says, if you take me, I will be able to carry it out, and I will be always submissive to you, and I always say that I speak in the name of God for you, and I will not threaten your position. He says, on the other hand, and that's already, he doesn't say it, but it's a subliminal message, because now Pharaoh is processing the information. He says, who am I going to put in charge of this whole plan? I could take one of my ministers, one of my officials, or I could take this kid. So if I take one of my established ministers, I'm going to give him an extremely powerful position, because he's going to hold the keys to the granaries, or to the food, to supermarkets. And we know how important food is. What happened to the last ruler, the famous ruler who could not provide bread for the people when they asked her for it, right? Marie Antoinette.
Cake.
Right? He says, right, let them eat cake, and it didn't end well. So Pharaoh was thinking of her, but he knows that if you give someone control over the food, it's more important than anything else. So if he gives it to one of his ministers, that minister might later on threaten him and take over as the king. He says, instead I'm going to give it to this slave. If he succeeds, he's always indebted to me and under me. If he fails, off with his head and we'll take another one. So he immediately responds to Yosef, since God made you know all this, you are the wise man, because you said I should look for a wise man to be in charge. You are the wise man. And he plays again with him. And you will be in charge. You will be in charge of all Egypt. He gives like tremendous power. He doesn't mind giving him all this power, because he realizes that he's going always to be under him. And he says, but you have to remember, I have the throne. I am the king. So Pharaoh has a perfect deal. He doesn't have to do anything. He could sit back and relax and let Yosef do the hard work. But for Yosef, it's also a good deal, because this is what he wanted from the beginning. He wanted to be in control of the granaries, and this also fits his first dream, even though his first dream was with the brothers. But what he saw himself as gathering sheaves. He is the one who's there. We are harvesting the wheat and making them into sheaves, into bundles. And this is exactly what Yosef is going to do now. He's going to gather the wheat from all Egypt and gather and store it in the granaries. There's another. The Midrash already saw this problem of the tension in Pharaoh's court. They say when Pharaoh told Yosef, you will be the viceroy, and without your permission, nobody's going to move his arm or leg in Egypt. אמרו לו הצטגניניו, עבד שלקחו רבו ב-20 כסף, תמשילהו עלינו. Here's a slave who was sold for 20 coins, and he's going to control us. אמר להם, גינוני מלכות אני רואה בו. I see that he has royal manners, meaning that he came from a royal family of Yaakov. אמרו לו, אם כן יהיה יודע ב-70 לשון, if this is true, he should be able to talk, to speak 70 languages, because that, according to the legend, this was required of all the diplomats in Pharaoh's court. So he says, tomorrow I will test him on that. And at night, the angel Gabriel came and taught him 70 languages. And in the morning, the following morning, he spoke with Pharaoh any language that was required. Then Yosef starts speaking Hebrew, and Lo Yada Paro Ma'usa, and Pharaoh doesn't understand him. So he says, "What? I didn't know this language. Can you teach me the language?" And he tried, and it just didn't. Pharaoh wasn't able to do it. It was so, I guess, it was different than all other languages, or it was a divine impediment that blocked him from learning it. Amalo, Paro ishava li shelo tegale. He says, okay, you have to swear to me that you will never tell anyone that I don't know this language. Now, all this, the whole story, is the first part of the story we can understand that has a root in the Tanakh, even though it's not written, but it's obvious that people, all the ministers or officials or whatever they were in Pharaoh's court, that they would not be happy. It's a complete outsider. I mean, not only an outsider, he's of criminal record, a slave, a prisoner, and a young man. Well, and from another country, is a foreign. Like all the reasons to disqualify him are there, and you make him the viceroy. And so this is. But the second part about the 70 languages should not be taken literally. It's a message that the Midrash delivers, and that is. And they're talking when the Midrash was written. It's about 2,000 years after the events took place. We are in exile. We are controlled by other nations. They want to give us. Again, we spoke about several times, to uplift our spirits. How do you do that? You tell them, you're scattered among 70 nations with 70 languages. This is the classical number. And they all are in control. And who are you? You're like this slave who came out of prison, but you have one language that they do not understand. And that's the Hebrew. And not only as a language, but the access to the Torah and to the knowledge that God gave you. In reality, if you think of it, this is what made the Jewish people survive, because we took those lessons and we applied them, and constantly even when we were in exile, we were bent on learning. One of the reasons that the Jewish people were able to survive and later on thrive as we are today is because from the Torah we learned how important it is to learn and to excel in education. We were always ahead of other nations in that, and that maybe is the thing that is here alluded to in the Midrash. Okay, we'll stop here.